Okay, question number 5. Let's see this real quick. It's asking us to write a Python function that will take a list of 100 random integers between 0 and 1000. And they say that we can use iteration, append, and a random module to create a test list, and we will do exactly that. And return the maximum value from that list of 100 random integers. And they tell us that there is a built-in function named max. There is, in fact, a built-in function named max that we could use to do this, but we're not going to use it because this exercise really, all it intends for us to do is it intends to test our ability to iterate through a list. So to do this, we would need to, number 1, create a list of 100 random integers. Number 2, iterate through that list, each item in the list, and check to see whether or not that item is larger than our maximum that we've seen so far. So, to do that, let's go ahead and start with importing random. And after I import random, I'm going to get an empty definition for max out of the way here, and just get that written out. So, iterates through list nums and returns maximum value. So there we go. That is our current function. So I'll just write a blank function right now to get that out of the way. I will define main, and in main I want to create a list of 100 random integers. So we can do that really easily. I'll just set my list equal to an empty list. And then I want 100 random integers, so I'm going to need a for loop that goes 100 times for I in range 100. And then I need 100 random integers, so thankfully there is a randint function that will do that for me. So I want something between 1 and 100, and I believe randint is inclusive, so this should get me it should be 1,000. This should get me up to and including 1,000. I believe it is inclusive like that, so we'll see. And then I want to add that to my list each time through the for loop. So my list append random randint 1000 will create a list of 1,000 random ints. And then I just want to 100 random ints, and I just want to print, I'll go ahead and print my list first. That way we can get the list of items and actually check to see whether the max is returning correctly, because if we don't have a random list, right? If we can't see the items in our random list, then there's no way to tell whether or not our max is actually returning correctly. So for that reason, I'm actually going to start with just a list of 10 because it'll make it easier to read. I'm going to print my list, and then I'm going to print the result of max my list. Okay, there we go. So that's our main function taken care of. Let's get our magic phrase. If double under name equals the string double under main, then run main. Okay, there we go. Now let's actually knock out this function definition. Okay, so I know I will want to return a variable. Now I want to return a variable called, I'll just call it maximum. We can't call it max because max is already defined as our function definition, so we can't use max again, but I will return maximum. That's going to be my return variable there that I'm going to return. It's going to be whatever the value of my maximum value is, and then I know I'm going to want to iterate through my loop. So for I in nums, for an integer in numbers, I'm going to want to do something, and I'm going to want to check to see each time through. I'm obviously going to want to check to see, is I greater than my current maximum? And if it is, I should set my current maximum equal to I. Right? That makes sense. So I'm going through each number in the list and checking to see, is it bigger than my current maximum? if it is bigger than my current maximum, set that equal to my current maximum. Now, how do I can run this, and it won't actually run. It will give me an error because I haven't defined maximum before I use maximum down here. So, before I use maximum down here in this if statement, I haven't defined it yet. I have to define it outside of this for loop in order to get it to work. So the question becomes, what should I set maximum equal to? What should maximum be before we get started? Should it be 0? We could do 0. 0 would make sense, but if we passed in a list that included negative numbers, so for example, if I change my, this would work perfectly fine for this list of positive numbers between 0 and 1,000. So, or between 1 and 1,000. So, maximum setting equal to 0 to start with works perfectly fine for the parameters of this problem. But if we wanted to change it so it can be used on a list of any integers, whether they're negative or positive. So, for example, if somebody passed in a list of only positive only negative integers, and I set my maximum to 0, it's only going to ever return 0. This function will only return 0 if we pass in a list of only negative numbers. So we can easily fix this so that our function will return negative numbers as our max as well, and that is simply setting maximum equal to whatever the first element of nums is. If we set it equal to the first element of nums, then we'll know, okay, the first element in my list here being negative 730, I know that that's the biggest thing I've seen so far, right? It's the first item. It's the biggest thing I've seen so far. So I go through my for loop after that, and I see negative 730. Is that greater than my max? No, it is my current max. Is negative 176 greater than negative 730? Yes, it is. And so on and so forth. So setting it equal to the first value of the list makes it so where we don't have to worry about trying to figure out how should I handle negative numbers, how should I handle positive numbers. This function, by doing this, now accepts any and all integers, whether they're negative or positive. So again, simply setting it to 0 if that's what you did outside of the for loop is fine, but setting it to the first element of the for loop makes this function so much more usable because that little change makes it handle negative numbers and positive numbers. So let's take a look at the textbook answer and run through that. Import random, define max equals 0 for element in list. If element is greater than max equals element, return max. Okay, so theirs looks functionally the same as ours. However, again, because we have set maximum equal to the first element in the list always before we start our for loop, it's going to make it so where our function is functional for any set of integers, not just 0 through 1,000.